She is sparkly, she is dark, she's mysterious. I'm absolutely in love. Hi, and welcome to my channel. Or if you're a returning subscriber, hi again. It's so nice to see you back here for another video. I'm gonna show you how you can make this stunning geode style resin rainbow catcher. Let's hop into today's project. When I'm not using my molds, I like to keep them wrapped in saran wrap, and that just helps to make sure that pet hair and dust stays out of them. For smaller molds, I'll also use just like sandwich baggies. And then just taking some duct tape to the mold really quickly just to get off any excess resin, pet hair, and dust. This mold holds 100 milliliters of resin, so to save some time in our video, I went ahead and pre-mixed my resin, but I'll be mixing my black in now. And I'm using both alcohol ink and some mica powder. And as always, I will have all of the materials that I use for this project linked down below in the description, so all of that information will be down there for you if you're interested. After I've thoroughly mixed my pigments into my resin, I like to let it sit for about 5 minutes or so to allow some air to come up to the surface, where I can easily pop those little air bubbles using my heat gun. So now that our black is fully mixed up and it's looking great, it's time to go ahead and pour that into our mold. And once I have completely filled my mold, I'm going to go ahead and cover this up and let it cure for about 24 hours or until it's completely solid. And to cover my pieces as they're curing, I like to use the cover of an old cake carrying case. And again, I will go ahead and link all of my materials and resources in the description down below. Alright, so we are on day 2 of this project, and now that the crescent is totally set up, I'm just going to go ahead and pop it out of the mold. And I pre-mixed 60 milliliters of resin, which I'll be using for my colors. So I'm just going to go ahead and start dividing that resin up into 3 smaller cups. And for this project, I'll only need a little bit of gray, a little bit of black, and a lot of white. I'm also going to reserve just a little bit of clear resin. So starting to mix my colors, and I'll be using a mixture of both pigment powders and alcohol inks. For my white, I'm just going to go ahead and use some Pinata colors in their Blanco. For the gray, I'll be using some more of that alcohol ink in the white, and just a tiny little bit of Space Gray by Arteza. For the black, I'll be using a combination of that Space Gray and some Mattia Black by Pinata Colors. Our next step will be to attach some of our larger crystals, so I'm just using a little bit of hot glue to do this just to hold them in place before we've poured the resin. And I like to cluster my larger crystals in clusters of 3 or 2s, so here I decided to do 1 cluster of 3 and 2 clusters of 2. And if you're enjoying this video so far, please don't forget to hit that like button. It not only helps out my channel a whole lot, it also lets me know that I'm making content that you guys want to see from me. Once the crystals are secured in place, I'm going to carefully take some of that clear resin that I reserved at the beginning, and I'm going to carefully pour some of that down around the base of my crystals. And you don't need too much here. I'm just pouring the clear resin where I want to put my thick crushed glass, and resin is pretty viscous and it takes a while for it to level out, so it's kind of better to pour less than you think you'll need because you can always add more, but you don't want the resin to just take over the entire piece. So here I'm just using my popsicle stick to make sure I've got that resin in the corners of the piece and really around the bases of all of those crystals. And next I'll go ahead and start adding my thicker pieces of crushed glass. And also, you guys, this channel is so close to being monetized, so I just wanted to quickly say thank you to all of you who show up and watch my videos. It really means the world to me. If you have someone in your life that you think might like these crafting tutorials as well, please go ahead and send them a couple of my videos. So I've poured a thin layer of my white down, and now I'm adding just a little bit of black and gray to the piece. And we don't need a lot of color here because we will be using the heat gun to bloom it out, so you don't want it to completely take over your background color. So the key to really blooming out your resin and getting cool cells is to start by just heating all of the resin up before you start to move your colors around. So as you can see here, this footage is sped up, but I did take quite a good amount of time just sort of going over the entire piece, warming all of that resin up, because as the resin gets more warm, it gets more fluid and easier to push around. You also don't want to overwork the piece or it starts getting a little bit muddy. So when I find a good stopping point, I'll go ahead and add just a couple more detail lines with my colors. And then I'll add some more of this crushed glass where the resin stops at the top of the piece. And that's also going to kind of help keep the resin where I want it to be and create a barrier so it's less likely to spread out through the rest of the piece. And then I'll go ahead and just prop this up with a little bit of wax paper, again to kind of keep that resin flowing downwards. And we'll let this layer cure. And now that this layer of color is totally cured, it's time to go ahead and add some more texture onto our piece. So I'll be using some more of my crushed glass, and I've got a finer crushed glass that I'll be using as well. And then I'm going to add a little bit of resin to my crushed glass, but just enough so that it's completely wet and sort of sticking together into a bit of a paste. But I don't want so much resin that this is going to be super runny because I really want it to stay exactly where I put it. Then the next step will be to transfer our crushed glass into some sandwich baggies, which we'll be using as piping bags. And one of you left a comment to put my empty bags into an empty cup before I tried to transfer my resin into the bags, and that has been such a lifesaver. I definitely recommend doing that. But after you've transferred your crushed glass into the bags, you'll want to go ahead and push all of that crushed glass to one side of your bag and twist it off. And then next we'll go ahead and cut openings in the tips of these bags. And because the crushed glass is so big, it's kind of important to make a pretty good opening just so you're not struggling to get it onto the piece. I'm going to go ahead and start by filling in some of those spaces where I have my thicker or bigger pieces of crushed glass, just to make sure that it's really nice and full in that area. And then I will go ahead and move on to my thinner crushed glass where I'm going to add a couple more detail lines. And it's okay if the lines aren't perfect. Again, this crushed glass is pretty chunky. You can just go ahead and use a clean popsicle stick like I'm doing here to clean up your lines and make sure that all of that glass is exactly where you want it to be. And then we'll go ahead and give it a quick hit with the heat gun to pop any of those little bubbles, and we'll cover it up. Alright, and we're getting close to being finished with this project. I think it's turning out so pretty. And next I'm going to go ahead and use my Deco Color Premium Paint Pen just to make a couple more detail lines and reinforce some of those thicker pieces of texture that I laid down previously. And I also have a couple of these pretty crescents up for grabs in my Etsy shop. It's fragilebeings.com. I'll go ahead and link my store as well in the description if you are interested to see what I have up for grabs, or maybe you want to grab a handmade gift for somebody. It's a great way to support my art and this channel, so I will leave it there. After we're done with the paint pen, it's going to be time to go ahead and top coat this. So I've put my crescent up on 2 small cups just because you don't want any of the resin to spill over the sides and cause the piece to stick to your wax paper or your desk. So it's really important to have it elevated as you're pouring your top coat. And this is a smaller piece, so I just went ahead and I mixed up 20 milliliters of resin to top coat this. You really just want a nice thin layer of resin on the entire piece, and that's going to help to preserve your paint pen and also just give everything a really nice glossy finish. So I've got my moon all set up. The top coat is nice and cured. So let's go ahead and put the hardware on this and finish it up. And so our first step is going to be to wire wrap this crystal. And to wrap my crystal, I'm just using some silver craft wire. I'm gonna take about 8 inches, maybe more like 10 inches. Give that a little cut with my wire cutters. And then these crystals have a little hole drilled into the top of them, so you'll just lace your wire right through that hole and adjust it till it's right in the center of the wires. And then you'll go ahead and cross those wires over the top of the crystal, just like that. And then next, I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping one side of that wire around the other. Using my needle nose pliers, I'm gonna go ahead and make a loop. So I'm gonna hold the wire with those pliers. I'm gonna fold that top wire over my pliers and then over itself. And I'm just gonna use that loop to hold that in place while I wrap that wire around a couple more times. And I'll go ahead and cut off this first wire here. And I'm just gonna use my pliers to tap that and tighten it down. And then we'll take this first wire here and wrap it around a few more times. Sort of clean it up. And then we will just go ahead and cut this side of the wire off as well. Alright, and so now we'll be able to hang this little crystal off of our crescent. The next step is going to be to drill some holes in this. So I need 2 at the top to attach a little chain to so you can hang it up on a wall or a windowsill. And then I'll need another hole here, sort of at the tip of the crescent, so we can hang a little chain down and hang the rainbow making crystal. And before you do start drilling your piece, I do think it's a good idea to just take a Sharpie and mark out the places on your piece where you're going to want to make the holes. Whenever you're drilling resin, it's really important that you are wearing some sort of N95 or respirator mask or something that will keep all of the small little resin particles out of your nose and your mouth, because you definitely don't want to aspirate that stuff. I would also recommend wearing some sort of eye protection because there will be little particles of resin flying everywhere, and you also don't want to get it in your eyes. So next I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of this E6000 glue down on a small piece of wax paper, and then I'll be dabbing this onto the bottom of my eye screws before I start to install them into the crescent. So now I've got a little bit of glue on this eye screw here, and I'm just going to start screwing that into one of these holes that I previously drilled. And I'll start out using my fingers, but as it gets in there and gets a little bit tighter, I will go ahead and switch to my pliers just to make sure it's in there as tightly as I can get it. Maybe just one more turn here. And then I'll just repeat the process with the other eye screws. I think I'm going to start out by cutting a little length of chain to attach these two and then move on to our crystal. So to start, I'm just going to go ahead and cut about 3 inches or so of chain. And then next I have these little jump rings, and I'm just going to go ahead and open one of those up. And I will attach that jump ring to one end of the chain. And after that, I'll go ahead and attach that to one of my eye screws up here, and I will use the pliers to go ahead and close that jump. And then just going in with my needle nose pliers, make sure that that's laying down nice and flat. And then I'll take one more jump ring, go ahead and open that up, and then I'll attach that to the other side of the chain, through. And once again, just closing that jump ring using my pliers. All right, now she can hang. And to finish this up, let's just attach our little rainbow catcher. And for the crystal, I'm just gonna cut about 1 inch of chain because I don't want it to lay too low in the crescent. I want it to be more or less centered in the middle of the crescent. Oh, and to cut my chain, by the way, I'm just using some little jewelry wire cutters. So quick little cut there, small length of chain. So first I'm gonna attach this to the crescent, and then after that, I'll attach the crystal. So same process, just opening up my jump ring and attaching that to one side of my chain. Then I'll go ahead and attach that to that last eye screw here. All right, and finally I will open up this last jump ring. Attach that to my crystal, to this little loop that we made earlier. Then I'll attach this to this little chain. But first I want to kind of measure and see how low it's sitting. It's too low. So I'm gonna cut probably about 6 links off of this chain. All right, and that looks to be a better length. So I'll go ahead and attach this. All right. And now we have our finished product. So I absolutely love how this one turned out, but she is sparkly, she is dark, she's mysterious. I'm absolutely in love. Let me know if you guys like this one, and let me know what color or colors you think that I should do next. And if you did like this video and you'd like to see some more geode tutorials from me, I do have a whole playlist of resin geodes. And as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending some of your time with me, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And if you did make it all the way to the end of this video, leave me some sort of black, silver, or space theme emoji just so that I know that it's real. Also, you guys, I don't know if you noticed, but I recently changed my name here. I had been thinking about it for a while, and it felt like it was the right time to do it. I also made an Instagram account under the same name, so that is Tess Lark with a 3 instead of the E, and I thought it would be a great place for us to have a little bit more of an open dialogue where you guys can send me pictures and videos of your projects, ask me questions. I'm definitely on Instagram pretty much every day, so if you're curious about my personal life and my day-to-day stuff, Instagram is a great place to find me. As always, I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear from you in the comments below. Oh, and one last thing. I was also recently thinking about filming a video for you guys where I talk about how I film tutorials and how I edit tutorials and some of that sort of back-end YouTube stuff. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know in the comments below. I know that I personally love watching videos like that, and I love watching the way that other artists are able to monetize their work and make a living off of their art. So if you would be interested in seeing a video like that from me, let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for being here, and I really hope that this video inspires you to make something of your own today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!